Hey guys, welcome to today's video lecture. I'm going to be talking to you today about animal communication and the trade-offs that communicating animals face when they're trying to communicate effectively. Now before I do, I am in the middle of a swamp forest just outside Kuching on Borneo, and I'm here to do a bit of field work which I'll discuss with you a little bit later on in this episode. Okay, so to communicate effectively, animals have to be conspicuous. Otherwise, that signal will not get through the environment effectively and the receiver will not be able to detect it. So effective communication is all about detectability. Now the problem with doing that is that you might not only attract the attention of your intended receiver, another conspecific, you might actually attract the attention of an unwanted receiver. For example, parasites, but in particular predators. So the more flashy and showy you are, or the louder you communicate, the more likely you're going to attract predators, as well as be communicating effectively to those conspecifics. So there are lots of classic examples in animal behaviour of how animals cope with this trade-off, and I'm here on Borneo to try and test one of those hypotheses in relation to how animals can remain conspicuous while also trying to avoid predators. Now, one of the key ways is that you can just be very savvy about when you decide to communicate. Obviously, if you're detecting a potential predation threat, perhaps you want to be trying nice and quiet. Otherwise, you might draw attention to yourself. But of course, if you don't detect a lot of predators, you can be as showy and loud and as attractive as possible to those female receivers. That often these signals are being given during mate choice. Now, the experiment that I'm doing here on Borneo is a pretty basic one. So we have a bunch of lizards. They are from the genus Draco. They are unusual for lots of different things, but two main ones. First of all, they're flying lizards, which is awesome. So they have wings and they glide through the forest. And the second really awesome thing about these lizards is that they have a bright, colourful dewlap, which they flick out during territorial disputes and also to attract mates as well. Now, the key thing about that dewlap is that it's really, really conspicuous. It's brightly coloured. And that's by design, right? It's trying to be detectable in that surrounding environment. Now, one of the ways that these lizards may be able to minimise predation, so attracting attention not only of those receivers but other predators, is by using a dewlap which is intermittent. They can choose to switch it on and off. Whereas other animals, and in particular other lizards, have brightly coloured body coloration, which they also use during territorial disputes and mate choice as well. But you can't turn those signals off, right? They're always visible. So presumably you're going to be more attractive to mates and more intimidating to rivals, but you're also going to attract attention of those predators. So the idea that I'm testing is to determine whether lizards that do the intermittent flicks, so they switch that signal on when they need it to be on, do they suffer lower rates of predation. So the experiment is set up to deploy a bunch of robotic lizards with a plasticine model mounted on the top. Now, the plasticine model is actually moulded from an actual Draco lizard. It looks pretty realistic, and the idea is that a predator, for example a bird or a large monitor lizard or a snake or a bush rat, what have you, will strike at that model and it will leave an impression in that plasticine. It's actually a really effective means of measuring predation in the field. Okay guys, so the experiment is pretty straightforward in terms of its design. There will be 3 treatments. The first treatment will be the robot with the plasticine model on the top with the dewlap going in and out, just like the animal does in real life. The colour of the dewlap has been matched to the same coloration as the focal Draco lizard. It's the prey item. It's an off yellow. The second treatment will have the dewlap permanently out, again with the plasticine model on top. The third treatment, which is really a control, a negative control, doesn't have the dewlap at all, and it will just have the plasticine lizard on the top. So there's no conspicuous movement and there's no conspicuous coloration. So we call it a negative control. We're anticipating few predatory attacks on the model lizard as a consequence. The mechanism for the robot is pretty straightforward. The whole system is powered by this set of AA batteries. This cartridge is actually empty of batteries at the moment. The dewlap is extended and retracted using this servo that flicks the dewlap in and out. That servo is controlled by the circuit board, which I've programmed to extend and retract that dewlap at exactly the same speed, same duration, and same type of sequence as these lizards do in real life. And the whole system is also connected to this light sensor, which detects basically whether it's dawn or dusk, and switches the robot off overnight. These are diurnal lizards, so they're only displaying and active during the day, so we want the robot to mimic that and shut off overnight. Okay, so this is fairly typical of what we get for impressions left on these plasticine models indicative of predation. We have these fairly dramatic claw marks, bite marks along the side there, pencilite claw marks or beak marks on the back. You may not be able to see it, but there's also quite a bit of piercings going on around the face as well. It's often quite typical in these experiments to get a lot of predation concentrated towards the head.